Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have another Mattel Jurassic World Dominion set to take a look at today, as we have the Pyroraptor and Kayla. Of course, the Kayla figure is pretty cool. It's nice to have a Kayla figure in the line, though I'm not too familiar with her quite yet at this point because I haven't seen Dominion, and of course this is her debut in the Jurassic series, so I don't know too much about her. But the Pyroraptor definitely looks nice. I think it looks better than the basic version, that is for sure. Much better paintwork, but it's still missing the larger feathers on the arm, which is a bit of a downside. I really would have liked to have seen the larger feathers included on this one, but regardless, I feel like the Pyroraptor here looks way better than the basic version did. And of course the paintwork as well. But as far as the packaging goes, it's definitely your standard Dominion packaging. There's no real difference on this compared to any of the previously released packaging of the figures. And you can again see here on the back, we've got the image of the Pyroraptor, Kayla, as well as the image down there of the Dimetrodon, which we have already reviewed here on the channel. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the packaging, and jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Pyroraptor, you've got some really nice skin texture there in the face of the dinosaur. You've got the nostrils sculpted out, the palate very nicely highlighted, and we also have the detailing there in the eye socket. Looks great. Like you can see some nice wrinkling and creasing there in the eye socket. As you move back a little bit further into the face, you can see the feathers starting to pick up, which also looks really nice. We do have an articulated jaw. It was a little stiff. I'm not a big fan of the teeth. I can say that straight away. I think the teeth, especially in this area, they look big and clumpy. They don't look very good on the figure. I think they almost look a little better over here, but the paintwork is incredibly sloppy. You can see they've just kind of slopped brown paint all over the place on this side, so it's pretty hideous over here. The eye paint looks good, though. We've got a nice yellow with a black pupil, black slit-like pupil, and both eyes are placed very nicely. The Dimetrodon I reviewed recently didn't have that pleasure of having nicely painted eyes, so it's nice to see it a little bit better here on the Pyroraptor. The inside of the mouth has some really nice tones of color. You can see there's an alternate tone of color from the tongue to the back of the throat, which is pretty cool to see. I've seen Mattel do this a few times recently, and I'm a big fan of adding in a little color variation on the inside of the mouth of the figure. And you can also see the upper side of the inside of the mouth sports that same kind of brownish, like reddish brown tone that we have there. So it almost appears as though the inside of the mouth up there is painted as well. So it's really cool to see some color variation on the inside of the mouth of the figure, nicely detailed as well. And it has a gloss coat on top of everything. And the teeth are painted with a nice off-white bordering on a yellow, kind of adding a bit of realism in that area as well. And you can see detail-wise, the top of the head looks great. You can start to see the feathers picking up again, and then we have those really cool feathers there hanging off the back of the head of the Pyroraptor. And we transition from that very dark reddish brown color to a lighter tone on the feathers sticking out right here. And if you look nice and close, the feather detail itself is really nicely done. Like they've put some beautiful fine detail into the feathers. I love the curves in the feathers as well, leading off of the back of the head. As you continue to move down through the course of the figure, the feathers look pretty good, but I feel like they're not quite as nice as you see sometimes from Mattel. Like I feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job on the feathers themselves, but you can see some tensing there in the neck, some muscle definition kind of. Moving down a little further, you start to see a little bit of a larger feathering picking up here, up in the shoulder area. Leading down into the arms, you again switch to the skin textured type of a look. The arms are held into the body in a really nice natural way, which I do like. You've got the muscle definition shown off nicely. More feathers kind of hanging off of the back of the arm. They are painted with a black. That's the one area where I feel like the feathers should have been a bit larger on this one, more so than what they are, because they're a lot smaller than what we see in the trailer. Again, the hands look great. I love the curves. I love how they're held into the body really nicely. They are pronated, unfortunately, but they look good as far as the sculpt goes, minus the positioning. And you have nice scoots down the fingers as well. No nail paint, unfortunately, which is a little bit of a downside. And then as you move back up here, again, you can see more like larger feathering running along the back of the figure right there, and then leading down here into the side, you have more of the skin texture, almost like an osteoderm type of a look, as there's like larger bumpy scales there, but more feathers leading off of the back of the thigh right there. Nice muscle definition. I'm not a huge fan of the abrupt changing color right there, but at the same time doesn't look terrible. Just isn't as smooth as I would like. But I like that the leg transitions and then takes over in a blackish tone for the majority of the leg leading down from the knee down. You've got a nice calf muscle, A really nice looking foot sculpt as usual when it comes to a Mattel figure, just a little bit larger than it needed to be. You've got the nails sculpted out nicely, but unfortunately they are just the same blackish tone of color. It looks good in a way because it kind of looks like there's nail paint, but you can clearly tell there isn't, especially because the hands don't have nail paint on them. And then leading back up here into the figure, you can see a little bit more of the skin detail here on the underside of the Pyroraptor, and more of the feather detail up here on the top. Once you lead out into the tail sports a lot of really nice feathering, and I think it looks really good out here, better than it does through a lot of the body. But again, still not as impressive as I would expect it to be from Mattel, but also not terrible. And you can see the feathers on the underside looks really, really good. As you lead over here to the opposing side, you're not really going to see too much difference on here, any more so than what we had seen on the initial side, because again, being a posable figure like this, you're not really going to see too much difference over here. But you can see that, again, the arms are kind of held in the same position. The only real big difference over here is the leg is leading on this side, as opposed to the leg trailing on the opposing side. And then I'll show you the, if I can get it out, the fax app code. We've got the Jurassic logo, the Rex head there on the back, and then you've got the fax app code right there to add that to your collection. But it's definitely a nice Pyroraptor, and I love the coloration of it just because there's a lot of color to it. Like, it looks painted from the head to the tail, so it's nice to see, some decent color applied to a Mattel figure. There are just a few downsides, but for the most part, I really like that one. Then we've got what I would imagine is some sort of a weapon from Kayla, if my camera would focus on it. It does have some alternate tones of color, as we have kind of like a very dark gray for the majority, as well as a brown. Don't know exactly what it is that I'm looking at, but I'm sure, again, I'll figure that out once Dominion lands in theaters. And then we've got ourselves our Kayla, and Kayla looks pretty good. Again, I haven't seen too much of her, only briefly in the trailer, and I'm not familiar with the actor that portrays her, so I'm not too familiar with the likeness of Kayla, but I think this figure as a whole definitely looks nice, and it looks exactly like I can recall from the trailer, although I didn't notice that she had alternate tones of color in her hair. As you can see, we have like blonde on the lower part of her hair and then black for the top. Really nicely sculpted hair, though. There's a lot of like really fine detail to the hair. And then again, as you lead down, you've got a jacket that she is wearing. It looks a little bit better than the Alan Grant one did, because I can't see too much of the color in there, but you can see it a little bit. It's just not as noticeable as far as the green there kind of sticking through the sleeves like we saw on Alan. It's not as noticeable on Kayla here. As you move down, again, very, very nicely detailed clothing on her, lots of creasing and everything like we saw on Ellen, and like you usually see when it comes to the Mattel line. You do have some gloves. You've got blue gloves on her, so a little extra as far as that goes. You've got some green pants. Again, lots of creasing and everything throughout, adding a lot of realism to the figure. And then brown boots, similar boots, I think, to what Alan was wearing as far as the tone and everything, but really, really nicely sculpted for sure. Beautifully painted. Lots of really nice paint variation and paint application. And her face as well, like the eyes are painted nicely, the eyebrows, even her lips sport some very nice coloration. So a really beautiful version of Kayla. As far as articulation goes, again, we have the articulation in the neck, which absolutely can swivel around and go exorcist on us. You've got the articulation in the shoulders, which can also swivel around. Same deal for the elbow. Can move and also swivel. Then you've got the midsection can swivel, the legs forward and back, also out away from the body, and then the knees also very nicely articulate. And then our Pyroraptor, articulation-wise, has the jaw. It's a little stiff, not as smooth as the Dimetrodon, but we've also got neck articulation, can swivel, and then move up and down. Very, very nicely done. Arm articulation forward and back. Leg articulation forward and back. It's a little stiff, but it works. Got to work that in a little bit. And then you've got the tail articulation, which as well can swivel, but that doesn't really serve much of a purpose. Definitely another fun set, though, and I'm really happy to have one of the more mainline versions of the Pyroraptor to add to my collection. As far as a size goes for Kayla, she is a little bit shorter than what you would usually expect for a human figure. She's a little under 3.5 inches, or about 8.5 centimeters, closing in on 9. And for our Pyroraptor, move him a little bit forward. Lengthwise, you were looking at about 7, closing in on 7.5 inches, or around 18.5 centimeters, maybe closing in on 19. And then height-wise, to the top of the head, you're looking at little over 2 3/4 inches or a little over 7 centimeters, but not by much. For a size comparison, there is the Attack Pack Clovisaurus, Mr. Papo T-Rex, and Alan Grant, the Alan Grant from the Dimetrodon set. Just to show you the difference in height between Kayla and Alan Grant, you can definitely see she's a little bit shorter than Grant, and you can see though that the Pyroraptor is pretty much right in the same size range you would expect in like the Attack Pack, Wild Pack size range. You could definitely see that next to the Clovisaurus. But one other figure I think would be a good one to bring in for a size would be a Velociraptor, because so many people have the Mattel Velociraptors. To show you again a size on the Pyroraptor, you can see it's actually a little bit smaller than a Mattel Velociraptor, so definitely showing you again that the Pyroraptor overall is fairly small. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dominion Pyroraptor and Kayla set is definitely a very, very nice set. I love the fact that we have a Kayla figure already. Again, we haven't actually seen the film yet, so I'm not positive how accurate she is toward the film, but knowing Mattel's track record and history, they're usually really good at kind of nailing that aspect of their human figures, so I would imagine this is pretty much exactly as she looks. And again, sculpt-wise, great, really nice movement throughout, beautiful paintwork, lots of nice paint application added to her, probably more than we see on the dinosaurs, and some very nice articulation as well. You also have that little weapon, but that's just a fun little extra, nothing too special in that area. And the Pyroraptor, again, I think looks way better than the basic version, which we have reviewed in the past. I think the sculpt looks a lot better. The detail as well pops a little nicer, but it's not quite as nice as I would expect from Mattel, just because I've seen, such very nice, vibrant detail in the past from them, and I feel like the feathers don't pop as much as I would expect them to on the figure. But that being said, it's still a gorgeous looking sculpt with a lot of decent looking detail throughout. The paintwork looks great on this one, though I will say that, aside from that kind of abrupt transition from the black to the reddish brown in the thigh, I like the fact that the coloration looks like it, runs through the whole body from head to tail, which is definitely a plus for this figure. I would have preferred some alternate coloration for the nails just to really iron out the nice paintwork, but unfortunately it does not have that. It is a little sloppy on the teeth on the one side, on the left side of the face, but that's just a little bit minor of an issue as far as I'm concerned. Regardless, it's still a really cool set, and definitely a set that I recommend picking up if you can, in fact, find it. Again, just like with the Dimetrodon, I did purchase this on Big Bad Toy Store, and it has sold out as far as I know last time I had checked, so we aren't going to be able to really get you a set of this through Big Bad Toy Store. I will link it in the description though, just in case it goes back into stock, because there's a good chance it will. But otherwise, make sure you pick this up if you can find it on Amazon or in store. I'm sure it's going to make its rounds in store eventually. Definitely a set worth picking up, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.